It started like any other week. The sun was setting on a Friday evening, and I was looking forward to a quiet weekend. My girlfriend, Emily, and I had been dating for almost 2 years, and things had been going great. We were comfortable, and life was moving smoothly. That's when she dropped the bombshell on me, "Hey, I'm going on a girls' trip this weekend." At first, I didn't think much of it. We had a pretty solid relationship, and Emily had a close-knit group of friends she'd known for years. I'd heard about the trip for a few weeks, and while it caught me off guard, I trusted her completely. I assumed it was just a fun getaway, a chance for her to unwind and enjoy some time away from work, the stress, and, well, me. I jokingly teased her, saying, "You're going to have so much fun, just don't come back married or anything." We laughed it off, and she playfully rolled her eyes. She packed her bags on Saturday morning, and I kissed her goodbye before she headed out. We exchanged a few texts throughout the day, nothing too unusual. Everything seemed normal, and I went about my weekend. But then, on Sunday afternoon, something didn't sit right. I was scrolling through social media, as you do, when a post from one of Emily's friends popped up. The caption read, "Amazing weekend in Cabo with the girls. At Emily_XX #girlstrip #living it up." I stared at the screen for a moment. Cabo. She never mentioned anything about flying out to Mexico. It was supposed to be just a weekend getaway somewhere local, something low-key. My heart dropped. I immediately texted her, asking for more details, but there was no response. That's when I started to feel a sense of unease creeping in. Maybe she's just busy, I tried to reassure myself. But the more I thought about it, the more the nagging feeling grew. Was there something she wasn't telling me? Little did I know, the next few days would unravel a truth that would shake me to my core. Chapter 2, The Cracks Begin to Show. The next few hours passed with a strange, unsettling energy hanging over me. I tried to push my suspicions aside, thinking I was just being paranoid. But as the evening went on, I couldn't shake the nagging feeling that something was off. It wasn't like Emily to go silent for so long, especially when we'd always kept in touch during trips. It wasn't unusual for her to send a quick text or post something on social media to let me know she was safe, but that day, nothing. No check-ins, no updates. Just the one post from her friend in Cabo, and then radio silence. I decided to call her. It rang, and I waited. Then, to my surprise, it went straight to voicemail. I tried again. Same thing. At that point, the paranoia set in. My mind began to race. What if something had happened to her? What if her phone died? Or worse, what if she was busy doing something else? Someone else? I tried to push those thoughts aside, but they lingered. I was tempted to call her friends, but I stopped myself, not wanting to come off as desperate or controlling. Still, a part of me wanted answers. Around 8 p.m., my phone buzzed. It was a text from Emily. "Hey babe, sorry, I've been out of touch. Things got a little crazy here. Everything's fine though. I'll call you when I get a chance." I read the message twice. "Things got crazy" didn't sound like her usual tone. Emily was always level-headed, and when she texted, she was clear and direct. This felt off. But I decided not to read too much into it. I replied, telling her to have fun and that I was looking forward to hearing from her later. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept tossing and turning, my mind fixated on that text. Around midnight, I got a message notification from her again. This time, it was a photo. Emily, smiling, standing with a group of women on what looked like a balcony overlooking the ocean. The caption read, "Girls just wanna have fun." At first, I felt a wave of relief. It was just a fun trip. Everything was fine. But as I stared at the photo, something made me pause. I zoomed in on Emily's face. She was smiling, but there was something strange about it. It wasn't her usual, genuine smile. It looked forced, almost like she was pretending to be happy. And then, I noticed something even stranger. In the background of the photo, a man stood leaning against the railing. He wasn't in the frame of the group shot, but his silhouette was unmistakable. Dark hair, athletic build, wearing a casual button-up shirt. My heart skipped a beat. I stared at the man for what felt like an eternity. Something about him didn't sit right with me. Why hadn't she mentioned him? I'd never heard about anyone else being on the trip. Emily was always open about her plans, always upfront. So why hadn't she mentioned this guy? Why had she sent me a photo with him standing right there, but not acknowledged him? I texted her back immediately, asking, "Who's the guy in the background of the picture?" I hit send and waited, tapping my fingers nervously against my phone screen. A few minutes passed with no response. Then, another message came through. "Oh, that's just a guy I met here. Don't worry about him, babe. I'll explain later. Don't stress." Something about that response felt wrong, too. Too quick, too dismissive. I didn't reply right away. I was too stunned, my mind racing. I wanted to trust her. I wanted to believe her. But I couldn't shake the suspicion creeping in. The man in the photo, the vague responses, the sudden distance, it all felt off. That night, I couldn't sleep a wink. My mind replayed every conversation, every small detail. And the more I thought about it, the more the pieces didn't fit together. It wasn't just the photo, or her strange behavior, it was everything. She was hiding something, and I was starting to realize that the girl's trip might not have been the whole truth. The next morning, I decided I had to get to the bottom of it. I had to know what was really going on, even if it meant confronting Emily about everything. I couldn't shake the feeling that things were spiraling out of control, and I was on the edge of finding something I might not want to know. Chapter 3, The Unraveling. The next morning, I woke up with a pit in my stomach. I couldn't focus. I kept going over everything in my head: the strange photo, the weird text messages, and the man in the background. I had to talk to Emily, but the more I thought about it, the more I dreaded the conversation. What if I was just being paranoid? What if I was misreading everything? But deep down, I knew something wasn't right. I decided to call her. My phone rang for a few seconds before she picked up. "Hey, babe." Emily's voice sounded cheerful, almost too cheerful. "Hey, where are you?" I asked, trying to keep my voice calm. "We're just getting ready to head to the beach," she replied. "I'll call you later, I promise. I'm so sorry I've been so missing in action. I didn't mean to worry you." Her words didn't feel like the reassuring ones I was hoping for. The more I listened, the more it sounded like she was dodging the topic. "Emily," I said, "about the photo you sent last night. Who was the guy standing behind you?" There was a brief silence on the other end of the line, followed by a sigh. "I told you, it's just some guy I met here," she said, her tone shifting slightly. "Nothing to worry about. I didn't think it was a big deal." "But you didn't mention him before. You didn't say you were meeting anyone else on the trip," I pressed. "And why didn't you tell me you were in Cabo? You told me it was just a local thing." Emily's voice went quiet for a moment. "I didn't think it was important, okay? I didn't want to make a big deal out of it. I just wanted to have fun with the girls." I felt my frustration building. "You didn't think it was important to tell me you were going to Mexico? And now there's this guy, who you didn't mention at all. Why are you being so evasive?" "I'm not being evasive," she snapped, her tone sharp. "You're overreacting. It's just a guy I met, and we're having fun. I told you I'd explain everything when I get back. Just trust me. My heart pounded in my chest. I tried to stay calm, but everything inside me was screaming. Something wasn't right, and it felt like Emily was lying to my face. I don't know, Emily, I said, my voice quieter now. I don't think you're being honest with me. I just don't feel right about this. There was a long pause on the line, and then Emily spoke, her voice lower now. Look, I don't have time for this. I'll talk to you later when I get back. Just stop overthinking everything, all right? And with that, she hung up. I sat there for a few minutes, staring at my phone in disbelief. I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being played, but I didn't know how to prove it. I couldn't just let it go, I had to find out the truth. That afternoon, I decided to do something I'd never thought I'd do. I reached out to one of Emily's close friends, Jessie. We'd hung out together a few times, and I felt like she might be someone who could give me some insight. I sent her a text, asking if we could talk. She replied almost immediately. Sure. What's up? I took a deep breath and asked, I was wondering if you could tell me about Emily's trip. I'm a little confused. I thought she was going on a local girls' weekend, but then I saw a post from her, and she's in Cabo? And there's this guy in the background of her photo. Do you know who he is? I waited for a response, my heart racing. It felt like I was opening a door to something I might not be ready to face. A few minutes later, Jessie replied. Wait, what? Cabo. I had no idea she was going there. I thought it was just a weekend getaway like you did. I haven't heard anything about a guy either. I froze, rereading the text several times. I couldn't believe it. Jessie had no idea Emily had gone to Cabo. My stomach churned. If Jessie didn't know, then who the hell was Emily really with? I quickly typed back. Are you sure? She didn't tell you anything about it? Nope. She hasn't really talked about it much at all. But now that you mention it, she did seem a little distant when I last spoke to her. My heart dropped. It felt like I was piecing together a puzzle, and none of the pieces were fitting. Thanks, Jessie, I texted back, trying to keep my emotions in check. I appreciate it. I sat there for a while, my thoughts spinning. Emily had lied to me about the trip, and now it looked like she was hiding something even bigger. The man in the photo, her odd behavior, the lies about where she was. Everything pointed to one thing. She had been hiding the truth from me. And I wasn't going to stop until I found out exactly what she had been up to. Chapter 4, The Truth Revealed. The next few hours felt like days. I was on edge, trying to process everything, but the more I thought about it, the more the situation seemed impossible. I wanted to believe Emily truly, I did. But everything from her weirdly distant attitude to the strange messages and the lies about her trip pointed to something much darker. It was becoming clearer that she was hiding something, and I was determined to find out what. I spent the evening scrolling through her social media again, looking for any clues. I found more photos from her trip, group shots, beach pictures, and more of that same guy in the background. I couldn't ignore him anymore. It seemed like every picture she posted had him hovering somewhere in the background, always lurking just beyond the frame. I zoomed in on each one, trying to make out his face. It was then that something caught my eye. In one of the photos, the guy was standing a little closer to Emily than before. Their bodies were angled toward each other, and though they were both smiling, the proximity felt too intimate. It wasn't the kind of smile I'd seen in the photos she'd shared with me before. It was more personal, almost flirtatious. I couldn't take it anymore. I had to confront her, face to face. I sent Emily a text, asking her to call me when she had a moment. I needed clarity. I needed answers. A few minutes later, my phone rang. It was her. "Hey, babe," she said, sounding calm, but there was an underlying tension in her voice. "What's going on? You've been acting a little distant since this morning." I forced myself to stay calm. "I need to talk to you about something serious," I began. "I've been looking at the photos from your trip, and I need to know who that guy is. The one you're with in every picture. And why you didn't mention him before." There was a brief silence on the other end, and I could hear Emily's breath hitch. "I told you, he's just a guy I met. He's nothing. It's not a big deal." I felt a sharp pang of frustration. "But you didn't tell me about him before. You said it was just a girl's trip, and now there's a guy in every photo. Don't lie to me, Emily. This isn't just some random guy you met on vacation. Something's off." I heard her sigh deeply. "I didn't want to hurt you, okay? I didn't think you'd understand." "Understand what?" I asked, my voice rising slightly. "What is there to understand? What's going on, Emily?" There was a long pause, and then she finally spoke, her voice quieter this time. "His name is Jake. We met the first night we were there. We hit it off, and we spent a lot of time together. Look, I didn't think it was a big deal. I was just having fun. I wasn't thinking about you, or what it might look like, or how it might make you feel. I didn't plan for it to happen, but we kissed. A lot." My heart dropped. The air seemed to leave the room as her words sank in. I had suspected something was wrong, but hearing it out loud felt like being punched in the gut. I didn't know how to respond. All I could think was, how could she do this? She continued, her voice shaky now. "I never meant for it to go this far. I never meant to hurt you. I'm sorry. I should have been honest with you from the start. I should have told you about him, but I was scared. I didn't know how to explain it." I took a deep breath, trying to process the flood of emotions rushing through me. Anger. Hurt. Betrayal. I had trusted her completely, and she had lied to me, right in front of my face. The guilt in her voice didn't make me feel better, it only made the sting sharper. "Why didn't you tell me?" I asked, my voice breaking. "Why lie to me, Emily? Why hide this from me?" She was silent for a moment, and when she spoke again, her voice was barely above a whisper. "I didn't want to lose you. I didn't want to hurt you, but I also didn't want to leave Cabo. I didn't want to walk away from Jake. I wasn't sure what I wanted, but I couldn't come back to you and face what I did." I closed my eyes, trying to steady myself. "So you thought it was okay to lie to me? To cheat on me, and then hide it from me?" "I never meant for it to go this far," she repeated. But I was confused, and I didn't know what to do. "I'm so sorry." I stood there, processing everything she said, but I couldn't find the words. I had no idea who this person was in front of me. The Emily I knew, the one I loved, was gone, replaced by someone I didn't recognize. She had betrayed my trust in the worst possible way, and now all I felt was emptiness. "Emily," I started, struggling to find the right words. "I don't know what to say right now. I need time. I need to think." "I understand," she said softly. "I'll give you space. I just hope you can forgive me one day." I didn't say anything in response. I couldn't. There was nothing left to say. She had broken something between us, and I wasn't sure if it could ever be fixed. I hung up the phone, my hands shaking. For the next few days, I did nothing but think. I replayed our relationship in my mind, all the moments I thought were real, all the times I thought we were building something lasting. And now, it was all a lie. I had to decide what came next. But I knew one thing for sure, I couldn't stay in a relationship built on betrayal. I had been cheated on, and nothing would ever be the same again. Chapter 5, The Aftermath. The days that followed were a blur of confusion and emotional exhaustion. I felt like I was walking through a fog, unsure of what to do next or how to process everything. I spent hours replaying the conversation with Emily in my head, wondering if there was any way to salvage what had been broken. But the more I thought about it, the more I realized that I couldn't just ignore what had happened. Emily had betrayed me in a way that felt impossible to overlook. The lies, the secrets, the cheating, it was all too much to simply forgive and forget. I didn't hear from her much after that night. She texted a few times, asking if I was okay, but I couldn't bring myself to reply. Every time I saw her name pop up on my phone, I felt a wave of anger and hurt. Part of me wanted to confront her again, to scream at her and ask how she could do this to me. But I knew it wouldn't change anything. The truth was already out. The hardest part was coming to terms with the fact that I had been in love with someone who could lie to my face so easily. Someone who had made me feel secure and trusted, only to betray that trust without a second thought. I couldn't believe that the person I had shared so much with, the person I had planned a future with, was capable of such a huge betrayal. One afternoon, I found myself sitting on the couch, staring blankly at the wall. I couldn't focus on anything. My mind kept circling back to Emily, to the idea of her with Jake, to the way she had betrayed me. My stomach churned with each thought. I had given her my heart, and she had crushed it. It wasn't just the cheating that hurt. It was the lies that followed. It was the fact that she had been hiding things from me, making me feel like a fool. All the times she'd told me everything was fine, all the moments I had trusted her, those were lies, too. I wanted answers. I wanted closure. But I also knew that there was no easy way to get either. A few days later, I decided to meet up with Jessie again. I needed someone to talk to, someone who wasn't wrapped up in the mess of my relationship with Emily. Jessie had been supportive when I'd reached out to her, and I hoped she could help me make sense of everything. We met at a cafe in town. I hadn't seen her in a while, but it felt good to be around someone who wasn't involved in the chaos of my breakup. Jessie greeted me with a warm smile, though I could see the concern in her eyes. "You look like you've been through the ringer," she said, sitting across from me. "How are you holding up?" I let out a long breath, trying to find the right words. "Honestly, I don't know. It feels like I'm living in a nightmare. I can't stop thinking about everything." "I know," she said gently. "I can't imagine what you're going through. Emily really messed up." "Yeah," I replied, my voice tight. "I thought I knew her. I thought I could trust her. But she lied to me, and now I don't know who she is anymore." Jessie nodded, her expression sympathetic. "It's hard, man. But you've got to remember this isn't your fault. You didn't do anything wrong. She made the choice to betray you." I swallowed, trying to hold back the tears. I don't understand how she could do this. We had something real. I thought she loved me." "I'm so sorry," Jessie said softly. "It's never easy when someone you trust does something like this. But you can't blame yourself. You did nothing wrong. You loved her, and that's not a weakness." I nodded slowly, appreciating her words, but the ache in my chest didn't ease. I still felt betrayed. Still felt lost. "I'm trying to figure out what to do next," I admitted. "Part of me wants to talk to her, to understand why it happened. But I don't think I can. I don't think I can ever trust her again." Jessie leaned back in her chair. "That's the hardest part. Once the trust is broken, it's really hard to rebuild it. Maybe it's not worth trying to fix things. You deserve someone who won't lie to you, who won't make you question everything." I took a deep breath, considering her words. It felt like a weight had been lifted, just a little. The idea of walking away from Emily, of cutting ties completely, was terrifying. But at the same time, staying in this toxic relationship felt even worse. "You're right," I said quietly. "I need to let go. I need to move on." Jessie smiled, her eyes warm with understanding. "You'll get through this. I know it feels impossible now, but you'll be okay. You're stronger than you think." As we sat there talking, something shifted inside me. It wasn't an immediate sense of peace, but it was a start. I realized that I had been clinging to the idea of Emily and the life we had built together. But that life wasn't real anymore. It was a lie, and the sooner I accepted that, the sooner I could begin to heal. Later that night, I sent Emily a text. I knew it was time to stop dragging this out. "I think we need to end things," I wrote. "I can't trust you anymore, and I don't think I ever will. This is over." I stared at the message for a few moments before hitting send. It wasn't easy, but I knew it was the right thing to do. As soon as I sent it, I felt a strange sense of calm wash over me. It wasn't relief exactly, but it was a step forward. The closure I had been looking for had finally come. The next chapter of my life had begun, and for the first time in days, I felt like I might just be able to move on. Chapter 6, The Road to Healing. The days following the text to Emily were a blur. It felt surreal, almost like I was living in someone else's story. I had ended things, but the pain of betrayal was still very real. Every moment I wasn't distracted by work or other activities, my mind would wander back to her, the way she had looked when she told me everything, the way her voice cracked when she admitted to what had happened. And then there was the haunting image of her with Jake, the man who had replaced me, even if just for that brief time. I spent the next few weeks focusing on myself, something I hadn't done in a long time. I'd been so wrapped up in Emily, in our relationship, that I'd forgotten what it was like to just be me. To be someone who wasn't defined by the ups and downs of a relationship. I started going to the gym more often. I threw myself into my hobbies, like playing guitar and writing, things that always brought me joy but that I'd neglected over the last few months. I even began to take long walks by myself in the park, just to clear my head and get away from the noise of everything. At first, it felt like the ache in my chest would never go away. I kept wishing I could go back to a time before the lies, before the betrayal. But as the days went on, the pain began to dull, just a little. There were moments, especially late at night, when I would remember something good about Emily, a funny memory or a tender moment we had shared, and I would feel the sadness creeping back. But I also reminded myself of what I had learned: love doesn't have to come with betrayal. It shouldn't. And I deserved better than what Emily had given me. One evening, I sat on my couch scrolling through my phone, when I saw a message from Jessie. She'd been checking in on me every few days, offering support, and I always appreciated it. "How are you doing?" the message read. I paused before responding. Part of me wanted to say I was fine, but the truth was, I wasn't. I wasn't fine, not yet. So instead, I wrote back. "I'm getting there. It's not easy, but I'm trying to move forward." She responded almost immediately. "You will. You're stronger than you think. And you know, if you need a distraction, you're welcome to come out with me and some of the girls this weekend. Just a low-key hangout, nothing crazy. You deserve to have fun again." It was tempting. I hadn't gone out or socialized much since the breakup, and the idea of being around friends again, having a good time, even if just for a night, sounded like exactly what I needed. "I might take you up on that," I typed back. I could use a change of pace. And that's how I ended up going to a small gathering at Jessie's place that Saturday. It was a small group: Jessie, a few of her friends, and some new people I hadn't met before. I still wasn't fully ready to jump back into the social scene, but I knew I needed to take a step forward. The night was easygoing. We played some board games, listened to music, and just talked. For the first time in weeks, I wasn't constantly thinking about Emily, about the hurt she caused, or wondering what I had done wrong. It was nice to just be, without the weight of betrayal hanging over me. Somewhere in the middle of the evening, Jessie introduced me to one of her friends, Sarah. She was easy to talk to, funny, with a laid-back attitude that immediately put me at ease. We ended up chatting for hours, sharing stories about our lives, and I found myself laughing again. For the first time since the breakup, I genuinely felt like I was enjoying myself. By the end of the night, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time: hope. Not the kind of hope that came from thinking things could be fixed with Emily, but the kind that reminded me that there was still joy in life. That there were still good people, good moments, and maybe even new possibilities ahead. As I was leaving, Sarah gave me a warm smile and a handshake. "It was really nice meeting you," she said. "Let's hang out again sometime." I returned her smile, feeling lighter than I had in weeks. "I'd like that." On my way home, I couldn't help but reflect on how far I'd come in just a short time. A few weeks ago, I'd been in a dark place, unable to imagine life without Emily. But now, I was realizing that I could stand on my own. I could be happy again. That didn't mean I had fully healed, but it was a start. Every day that passed, I grew a little stronger. I had taken my first real steps toward letting go of the past, and for the first time in a long time, I could see a future where I wasn't defined by heartbreak. As the weeks went by, I started to get back to a rhythm. I didn't need Emily to feel complete. I didn't need anyone to validate me. And though it still stung when I thought about her, when I thought about what she had done, I knew that the healing process wasn't linear. It wasn't about erasing the pain, it was about learning how to live with it, how to move forward despite it. And eventually, I started to look at relationships in a different way. I realized that real love wasn't about perfection. It was about trust, communication, and respect. It was about being with someone who chose you every day, not someone who would lie to you and betray your trust when things got hard. I wasn't looking for anything serious yet, but I was open to the possibility. I knew that in time, I'd find someone who would treat me with the love and respect I deserved. Someone who wouldn't lie, someone who wouldn't hurt me. And when that time came, I would be ready. The future was uncertain, but for the first time in a long while, I was excited for what it might hold. I had learned some painful lessons, but they had made me stronger. And now, the road ahead was mine to walk. Chapter 7, Moving Forward. As the months passed, the weight of the past gradually lifted. Emily became more of a distant memory, a chapter in my life that had taught me painful but valuable lessons. It wasn't that I had forgotten everything, I still thought about her sometimes, especially when something reminded me of the good times we had shared. But the emotional intensity of the betrayal had begun to fade, replaced by a new sense of self. I no longer defined myself by that relationship or by the hurt she caused me. I had rediscovered who I was before Emily and started to build a life without her. Work had been a good distraction, keeping me busy and focused. But outside of that, I had begun to form new habits. I spent more time with friends, going out on weekends and taking weekend trips when I could. I reconnected with old friends who had drifted into the background during my relationship with Emily. I even traveled a bit, exploring places I had always wanted to visit. It felt liberating to do things on my own, without the pressure of maintaining a relationship or living up to someone else's expectations. One afternoon, I found myself sitting at a coffee shop, sipping my usual espresso and reading a book I had meant to start ages ago. It was one of those quiet moments of peace where everything felt in balance, and I couldn't help but feel grateful for how far I had come. That's when I saw her. I didn't hear her voice at first, but I felt her presence. A strange, unsettling feeling washed over me before I even turned around. But when I did, there she was. Emily. Standing in the doorway of the coffee shop, looking the same as she had when we were together, except her eyes looked different. There was a distance to her, a vulnerability that I hadn't seen before. She froze when she saw me, and for a moment, neither of us moved. I couldn't tell if I was more surprised or unsettled. I was about to turn back to my book and pretend I hadn't seen her when she took a hesitant step forward. "Hey," she said softly, almost unsure of herself. I closed my book, setting it aside. I didn't want to avoid her, but I also wasn't sure how to react. We hadn't spoken since I ended things. Not once. It was as if I had completely erased her from my life, and now she was standing right in front of me, breaking the silence. "Hey, Emily," I said, my voice steady. I felt a strange mix of emotions: curiosity, anger, even pity. But I wasn't angry anymore. Just indifferent. She stood there awkwardly for a moment, as if she didn't know what to say. Finally, she spoke, her words coming out in a rush. I've been thinking about you a lot. About us. About everything that happened." I raised an eyebrow, though I couldn't quite place the emotion behind her words. Was it regret? Was it guilt? I wasn't sure I cared anymore. I didn't know if I should reach out, she continued, looking down at the floor before meeting my gaze again. But I couldn't just let it end without apologizing. I've done a lot of thinking, and I realize how wrong I was. How much I hurt you. I nodded slowly, feeling nothing but a quiet kind of detachment. I appreciate the apology, Emily, but I've already moved on. There's nothing left to fix. It's over. Her expression faltered, and she seemed to shrink a little, but she nodded in understanding. I get it. I've needed to say this. To you, and to myself. I didn't respond immediately. There wasn't anything to say. She had made her choices, and I had made mine. What had happened between us was in the past, and I wasn't interested in revisiting it. Emily gave me a small, sad smile. I don't expect you to forgive me, she said quietly. I don't even know if I could forgive myself. But I needed you to know that I'm sorry. For everything. I studied her for a moment, taking in the woman standing before me. She wasn't the same person I had loved, she was someone who had made a choice, and those choices had consequences. I had suffered from those consequences, but I had also learned from them. I know, I said simply. But we can't change what happened. All I can do now is move forward. She nodded again, slowly, and after a long pause, she spoke. I hope you're happy. Truly. You deserve to be. And with that, she turned and walked away. I sat there for a few minutes, staring at the empty space where she had been. The whole encounter felt surreal, like a scene from a movie. There was no grand confrontation, no emotional outburst. Just a simple, quiet moment of closure. For the first time in a long time, I didn't feel the sting of betrayal. I didn't feel anger or sadness. I felt peace, true peace. She had come, apologized, and left, and I realized that I was finally free. Free from the past. Free from the weight of the lies. Free from the person I thought I knew, who had shattered everything I believed in. I finished my coffee, left a tip for the barista, and walked out of the coffee shop into the afternoon sunshine. I didn't know what the future held, but I was no longer afraid of it. I had learned to trust myself again. And that, I realized, was the first step toward truly healing. I wasn't waiting for anyone or anything anymore. I was moving forward on my own terms, and that felt better than anything I had experienced in a long time. The next chapter of my life was already unfolding, and for the first time in a long time, I felt ready to embrace it. The road ahead was uncertain, but one thing was clear, I was no longer the person who had been hurt. I was someone new, someone stronger. And I was finally, truly, free. Chapter 8, New Beginnings. It had been months since my encounter with Emily in the coffee shop. I had allowed myself the space to fully process everything: our relationship, her betrayal, and my eventual decision to walk away. The healing was far from instantaneous, but I had grown so much stronger in the time since that moment of closure. Life had slowly resumed, and I was beginning to feel like I was living again, not just surviving. The spring was slowly transitioning into summer, and the city was starting to buzz with the energy of long, warm days. I had settled into a new routine, one that didn't revolve around Emily, didn't revolve around any relationship, but rather focused on me and what I wanted. It wasn't just about being happy, it was about finding peace in being on my own, and that peace was more fulfilling than I had imagined. Work was steady, but I had started taking more time off to do things I had always wanted to do. Traveling had been something I'd always dreamed of, but it had been something I put on the back burner when Emily and I were together. Now, I was exploring new places, eating foods I'd never tried, and meeting people who weren't connected to my past in any way. I had even reconnected with old hobbies: writing, photography, hiking, that I had let go of while in a relationship. I had become friends with Sarah, the girl I met at Jesse's gathering. It started casually, a lunch here and there, exchanging messages about music and travel, but over time, I found myself looking forward to spending time with her. Sarah was kind, easy to talk to, and didn't have any baggage tied to my past. She made me laugh and encouraged me to keep pushing myself, to keep doing the things that brought me joy. She didn't try to fill any gaps I had left after Emily. She simply accepted me for who I was now, and that was enough. One weekend, Sarah suggested we go on a short road trip to a coastal town a few hours away. It was something spontaneous, something lighthearted, and I agreed without hesitation. It felt good to do something without thinking too much about it, without overanalyzing whether or not I was ready for another step. We drove with the windows down, music blasting, stopping only for a coffee break at a small roadside cafe and to stretch our legs in a field of wildflowers we stumbled upon. We had no agenda, no expectations. We simply existed in the moment, enjoying the simplicity of the road and the company. By the time we reached the coast, the sun was beginning to dip below the horizon, casting a golden glow over the water. We walked along the beach, letting the cool evening air fill our lungs. For the first time in what felt like forever, I wasn't weighed down by memories of the past. The ocean's vastness reminded me how much bigger the world was beyond the pain I'd felt. There was so much life to be lived, and I was finally starting to live it. As we stood by the water, Sarah turned to me with a smile. "I'm really glad we did this." "Me too," I replied, the weight in my chest lighter than I had felt in a long time. "This feels freeing." We spent the evening in a cozy beachfront diner, talking about everything and nothing. It was easy. Comfortable. No expectations. Just two people enjoying each other's company. When we returned to the car later that night, as we drove back toward the city, I felt a sense of quiet fulfillment. I was no longer caught up in trying to forget the past or heal from a wound that would never fully disappear. I wasn't looking for a way to move on as much as I was learning how to live fully in the present. The future was no longer something I feared. I had my own life to build, and for the first time, I was excited about the possibilities. The following week, Sarah texted me about grabbing lunch, and we began seeing more of each other. But it was different than before. I wasn't rushing into anything. There were no heavy expectations hanging over us, no fear of repeating past mistakes. I was allowing myself to just see where things went without letting past relationships define how I approached new ones. One day, after another casual lunch, Sarah and I walked to a nearby park, sitting on a bench under the shade of a large oak tree. We talked about the future, about dreams and aspirations. I could feel that familiar connection starting to form, but I didn't push it. I didn't need to rush into anything. I was comfortable with myself, And that was enough. I never thought I'd be here, I admitted after a moment of silence. You know, after everything with Emily. I didn't think I could feel this way again. I thought the past would always have a hold on me. She looked at me, her expression warm. I get it. I think everyone who's been hurt carries a piece of that pain with them. But it doesn't have to define us. We're more than what's happened to us. I smiled at her, feeling a genuine connection. You're right. I think I'm starting to understand that. I don't need to rush into anything. I just need to trust that whatever happens, I'll be okay. And for the first time, I truly believed it. I wasn't the same person I had been when Emily and I first met. The man I was now had been shaped by the hurt, the lies, the lessons learned. But I was stronger for it. I wasn't afraid to be alone. I wasn't afraid of the future. I wasn't afraid of love anymore, whether it was with someone new or with myself. I was ready to embrace whatever came my way. Life wasn't perfect. It wasn't about erasing the past or pretending it didn't matter. But it was about growing from it, using the lessons learned to make better choices and live a fuller, more authentic life. As I sat there with Sarah, listening to the breeze rustling through the trees, I felt a sense of peace wash over me. I wasn't sure where life would take me next, but I was confident that whatever happened, I would be okay. It wasn't about finding closure with someone else, it was about finding it within myself. And for the first time in a long time, I truly felt free.